Hopwood Hall Estate in Middleton, England, had been abandoned for decades before I discovered it one night while searching my family tree on Ancestry.com. The 60-room estate had been massively damaged by thieves, bad weather, and rot. But with the help of the community and heritage experts, it's our mission to rescue and restore it.
Here we are outside the entrance gates of Hopwood Hall, built by my ancestors in the 1400s, and today I'm going to give you a grand tour. Let's go take a look. And here we are in the Hopwood Woods, and this is the road that the carriages used to roll up and down as they went to and from the hall.
After Hopwood Hall had fallen into complete dereliction, the local council erected a security fence to protect it.
And welcome to Hopwood Hall.
Many generations of my family have lived at Hopwood Hall and can be traced back to the 1400s and beyond. In addition, there were hundreds of other members of the local community who also lived and worked on the estate. A lot of their descendants are still here today, helping in the rescue efforts. Even though the hall was abandoned and near collapse for the past several decades, we can still see the beautiful evidence of a lost time gone by.
This is the original carriage entrance, as you can see by the arch where the carriages would have rolled through. And we have this massive, big, medieval double door. And this would have swung open as the carriages approached, provided they were invited guests. But you can just see the handiwork and the beautiful craftsmanship on this door. All of this metal work would have been done by the resident blacksmiths who lived on the estate. And you can see the centuries of grain and use and wear and tear, and it's absolutely beautiful. And we're so lucky that this door is still here intact, because it harks back to a much earlier time in the medieval days. Let's go inside. This is the courtyard, and this is where the carriages would have come in, and this was where they would turn around. They would drop their guests off outside of the Manchester rain underneath the arch that we just walked through. Meanwhile, the carriage driver would have turned the carriage around, backed it up, and pulled it just so it was ready for when the guests who they dropped off had departed. Now you can see this has become kind of a staging area for us. This is what we're using in the renovation for all of the works that are going on. These are all centuries-old roof tiles that will go back up on the roof as we're doing these works. You can really start to take in the beauty of the hall in this courtyard, because this is where so many guests who came over the centuries, this would have been one of the first sights that they saw on the interior of the hall. This was the inner sanctum. And as you can see, there are windows from many rooms that look down into the courtyard, and that was to provide an adequate vantage point from so many different wings of the house so that staff and family could see what was coming and going on a day-to-day basis at the hall. And of course, you might have noticed the ram's heads that are carved out of stone and adorn the area in the courtyard. And that was really to signify to visitors as they arrived how the family had made their success. And that's because the Hopwood family was very involved in the wool industry. And now that you would have gotten off your carriage, we're going to head into the guards room. This was built in the late 1600s, and it was where you would have met the guards. They would have searched you for weapons to make sure if you were a friend or a foe. If you passed the test, you would have been allowed to come here and stand by the fire. Now you can see this is very fitting stone fireplace for the guards room, because it has the heads of 14 angry dogs and 3 lions on it, signifying that this was a room all about protection. We've done a lot of work on the walls. Unfortunately, in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, a lot of improvements were done here in the hall. And they didn't realize at the time that the concrete rendering they were putting over this historic brick was very damaging to it and not allowing it to breathe. So therefore, with the help of a lot of local friends and volunteers, we had to hand chip all of this rendering off to remove it so that it can dry out. And then in the future, we can replace it with lime mortar, which will allow it to breathe. You can also see a number of beautiful antiques here in this room and also in the hall. We keep those covered at this time of year until we have our next event, but a lot of them are absolutely stunning and they've been donated or gifted or left as a legacy gift to the hall to give a nice home to these historic pieces of furniture. And now I'd like to take you into the main reception hall. This is where you would have been allowed to go if the guards gave you the thumbs up. This room was also built in 1690 and was where friends, family, and the community gathered for large events. And that's exactly what we still use it for today. As you would have come in here as a guest, you would have been able to come to this major stone fireplace, which was a showstopper of the room. And you can see here some of the inscriptions and carvings. Right here we have the stag, which was the family heraldic animal. And then we have the words "by degrees" carved into the fireplace in two places. And that is thought because the Hopwoods were part of the Middleton archers who helped win the Battle of Flodden Field in 1513. And it's thought that in archery, the difference between hitting the target or missing completely is simply by degrees. One of the things I love about Hopwood Hall is the juxtaposition of history. Through these wooden double doors, it leads to the historic long gallery corridor, which connects to the oldest room in the house dating back to the 1400s. And then up these stairs, it goes to a 1960s nightclub where famous acts like Ozzy Osbourne once performed. We're back in the carriage entrance, standing next to this beautiful medieval door, which is exactly opposite the door to the guards' room. If you look at it, you can still see the family crest that is carved into the wood up there, showcasing the stag, as I mentioned earlier. So come on into the family chapel. This was built in the late 1600s as well, and one of the main features of this room is the beautiful hand-carved door. Look at this exquisite detail. So pretty. And this room just exudes architectural character. A lot of history has been here in this room. We have these beautiful pieces of furniture that have also been donated here for the chapel, and it really starts to bring a feeling of people sitting here and practicing their religion. Now remember, this room was built not too long after the Reformation, which was when Catholics were being persecuted. So that's when families like the Hopwoods would have built their own family chapel so that they could practice religion in the safety of their own home. And now we are in the morning room. This is where the family would have gathered first thing in the day. In a big house like the hall, people didn't have messaging, they didn't have cell phones, so you had to know where to meet everybody first thing in the morning. So this was the room. This is where they would have breakfast and read the papers and talk about the night before's events. As you can see, there's an incredible hand-carved ceiling above us, built to impress people who came to visit, and also something just for people to look at and feel special in this room. And as you might have noticed, below me is the floor, which is missing, and that's due to the fact that it was infested with dry rot. All the dry rot's been removed and is dying off, and we now have plans to restore the floor to its original grandeur. And behind me is a hand-carved fireplace. And next to that is the old servant's bell, which would have rang back to the kitchen if anybody needed anything brought forth to this room. And behind me is a Gothic door, which is beautifully carved as well. This unfortunately was a victim of vandalism, but it is on its way with a plan to restore it. And now we're entering the library. This is a very important room in the house. This is where all of the studying, researching, and reading happened. This was the true heart of it. And this is actually where we're having all of the different archives and books that have been donated to us are being stored in this room. This room has also a lot of other things like 2 grand pianos that were donated to us stored. But the architectural feature of this room are the 2 large leaded bay alcove windows. Now these were constructed originally before electricity, so this allowed people who were in the library to sit and comfortably read into the late hours of the day and early evening. So we'll be using them for the same thing. And this is the banquet room. This was built in 1689 for a wedding and then renovated in the 1700s. One of the things you can immediately see is this massive bank of windows behind me. That was to let maximum light in, and this was an ideal area for a small orchestra to be able to play while people were dancing in a ballroom type setting. It's said that even Chopin himself played right here in this alcove. What I love about this room is also the extraordinary plasterwork. It's so beautiful and gives a sense of how grand this room once would have been. Protected in this box over here is a beautiful marble fireplace, and above it was a one-of-a-kind beveled mirror that was unfortunately smashed by vandals. Of course, you can see I'm standing on what looks like a brick arch. Well, this is actually the top of the network of cellars that run below me. We're deep in the cellars, well below Hopwood Hall. This area is centuries old and still has the meat hooks hanging from the ceiling. It would have housed wines and cheeses and is a cavernous space and has winding corridors. It has a stream that runs underneath it that keeps it at 3 degrees centigrade. It's a very spooky space. And this is the Oak Parlour, the oldest room in Hopwood Hall, dating back to the 1400s. It originally was a 2-story timber-framed hall with a thatched roof, and these beams were added in the 1500s to make way for another room above it, which later became known as the Lord Byron bedroom. Now, if you look around at the walls, you can see the hand carvings that tell the stories of centuries gone by. We have a ceremonial marriage plaque dating to 1689. There's little cherubs and figurines and people playing instruments from the 1500s, flowers and roses. It's absolutely mesmerizing. And this is the birthing room. This also is a very old section of the hall dating back to the 1400s. And this room is especially meaningful to me because this is where my great 14 times grandfather would have been born. To reach out and touch the same paneling and look at the old fireplace is just mind-blowing to me. Now, you might notice that there isn't a floor in this room. And that's because there was a local legend that one of my ancestors went mad and he was dropping gold coins into the floorboards to hide them. Well, that story got out and vandals broke in, and of course, all the floorboards disappeared as everyone was looking for the gold. Of course, no gold was ever found. And above me, you can see these very old timbers on the ceiling that are supporting the upper open hall that would have once been here. When I walk into this room, I feel exhilarated to think that so many generations before me passed through this room and were born and bred right here. And here we are in the long gallery corridor. This was built for the ladies of the house to be able to stroll up and down to get their daily exercise. At one end, we have a fireplace that dates back to 1658 and is said to be a gift from Lord Byron. The walls also are covered in carvings over here in this beautiful alcove. And this alcove has a large bank of windows here, and this was to provide all the daylight so that guests could sit and relax and read a book. The ceiling is very ornately plastered. If you'd like to learn more about the Long Gallery, be sure to check out our episode specifically about this room. Here we are above the Long Gallery corridor in the upper gallery. And this is an area that's just off of some of the main bedrooms for the family. So this would have been where they gathered in the evening hours before they retired to read a book or relax and have a conversation. It's a less formal area, and this would have been where they would have displayed more personal works of art. Here we have this beautiful alcove with big windows letting in light late into the evening. Unfortunately, you can see some of the windows were attacked by vandals several years ago, but we are slowly and surely making our way through those repairs. This is one of the bedroom wings with 8 bedrooms that overlook the carriage entrance on one side and the courtyard on the other. This would have been an area where many guests would have stayed over the years. And you might recognize it from our other videos as we nicknamed it Pigeon Alley because of our pigeon problem.
Go out the window. Well, the last thing I want to do is back it. Oh gosh.
I really can't wait for this all to be cleaned up and restored once again so we're ready for guests and visitors to come and experience it. And when I say guests, I don't mean pigeons. And this is the master bedroom. So over the years, there have been a lot of alterations to this room, but you can still see the historical magnificence. There is this big window right over here that overlooks the original estate grounds. Now originally this would have been a double-story high bedroom, so a very impressive space showcasing these historic beams. And behind me you can see where there would have been a huge fireplace, although that has been blocked up. And that was done when this was used as a classroom. And this room has attracted a lot of creatures, as you've probably seen in our other videos. We've had bees living in the walls. We've had bats living in the beams. We've had pigeons swirling around in here. We've had a cat spring out of this area in the floorboards. And just now we found a nest of ladybugs hibernating in the windows. Clearly, there is something about this room. I love these old windows. These floor-to-ceiling, double bay, leaded glass, diagonal cut windows. This is one of the upstairs guest rooms at the hall. And its unique feature is these windows that let an enormous amount of light in here. And I love to come up here and just imagine how they would have lived back then, overlooking the gardens and just enjoying the surroundings. All right, so now we're gonna do a little walk around the exterior of the hall. A lot of you have been asking to see this. We're back here by the rear of the hall. It's still in very rough condition, but it's getting better. We're making great progress every day, every week, every month, every year as we continue on this process. And a lot of that has been the community. Here you can just see these little touches, like they turned this pallet wood into a pot store where they keep all their various pots for the plants that they're getting ready to go into the garden, and really rebirthing the gardens all around the hall. And then of course we have this beautiful brick wall here that was created by Edgar Wood, and I just love the arts and crafts look of it. It's just stunning with the greenery and the moss that's kind of coming out, and it's still here fully intact and really is a high point feature of the hall when people come to visit. We keep going around here through the edge of the servants' wing. And here, this whole area was covered in mud and dirt and bramble and weeds. And the local community has come behind this in the gardening club and started to scoop this out and breathe life back into the beds. Of course, this time of year, most stuff has been cut back, but in the spring and summer, it's absolutely a burst of color all along here. This is the servants' wing, and was probably the worst section of the hall in terms of condition. It was collapsing and falling down. Now this was an area that we couldn't really even go before. Slowly, everything is being removed, and carefully, because it all looks like that. And this whole area is then gonna be, look at that. This whole area, get around the corner, no floor. We've since massively resupported this, rebuilt the roof and the chimneys, and repointed this. This was pointed with cement, concrete, in the 60s and 70s, which is not good for brick. It needs to be lime mortar. So all of that's been pulled out and repointed in this way. You can see some of the effervescence coming out, that sort of whiteness that's showing on the bricks. And then that residue will sort of fade away and the beauty of the bricks will come out once again. This here was what we call the garden entrance, and this is where the gardeners would have come and gone. This would have led to the kitchens here. You can just imagine that lots of people were coming and going through these doors, hustling and bustling and trying to power the estate on a daily basis. Here I am standing in one of the original pantries, and next to us is part of the old kitchens. Unfortunately, this is in the servants' wing, and a large portion of this has been destroyed. So we can't really show you the old stoves and pots and tables that would have been here, and I think a lot of you were hoping to see. Now, we showed you one of the switches in the morning room, but but there would have been switches run by pulleys throughout the house, in the bedrooms and the various grand entertaining rooms. That way someone could ring the bell simply by a pulley switch system. Now also just outside the kitchen on the exterior was a kitchen garden. And one of the exciting things is that through our archaeology, we have been finding pieces of old pottery and remnants of kitchenware, which is really exciting, dating back to the 1700s, the 1600s, and even the 1500s. And here we come down to the main part of the terrace here, and I love this spot because you're elevated, and this is what they call the exedra. This was created again by Edgar Wood with this prominent curved wall here with the castellations on top of it. A very beautiful feature of the house. A big fountain would have sat here at one point, and of course we're raised and we're overlooking the gardens. Here we have the entrance to the guest stairway. This is a beautiful hand-carved staircase from the 1600s, and many notable guests came up and down these stairs, including Lord Byron himself as he made his way to his bedroom. And this room is most notably known as the Lord Byron bedroom, although it dates back much earlier to when it was created for members of the family. You can see the spear truss behind me, which dates back to the 1420s, although the trees would have been seeded in the 1100s. You can still see the axe marks on here where the workers cut the trees down. It's just incredible. And this room also features a large fireplace. I love this room because it also has a big, beautiful alcove that overlooks the garden. Now here we are outside the oldest section of the house. This originally was timber framed, which is now concealed by the brick that was added in the 1500s. These are very, very old bricks, as you can see by the bluish hue that is on them. We've been restoring a lot of these leaded windows, training people, a lot of students and community members learning how to rebuild leaded glass windows. Now we've had to have temporary security measures installed like this hideous door, but eventually that will be replaced with something like it should have been, which would have been kind of a big wide wood door. And this is the exterior of the banquet room. Here you can see we've had some terrible vandal attacks over the decades. Good news is we're on the upswing, we're repairing those, fixing them right now. They're covered with chicken wire just to protect what's there. As you can see, we have many different centuries of building, one after another, 1400s, 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, 1800s. It really tells many stories of the families and the generations that lived here. It's just such an honor and a privilege to be involved in this project, to walk in the same footsteps as my ancestors, but also the same footsteps as the community members who are helping in the rescue. It really is an incredible project to be part of. All right, well, that concludes our grand tour here at Hopwood Hall, although there are lots more rooms to see. So be sure to check out the videos down below, many more on our channel, as well as much more in the renovation to come. And if you like these videos, please like, share, subscribe, and click the bell to be alerted about our latest content. And if you want to see more videos, join us on Patreon. Until then, we'll see you next time. Hey favorites, thank you for hanging until the very end. If you'd like to read my book called Downton, Shabby from HarperCollins, it is a story about Hopwood Hall. It's available for purchase online. Thank you so much.